God, the all-merciful, earth hath forsaken thy ways all holy, and slighted thy word. Did not thy wrath in its terrors awaken? Give to us peace in our time, O Lord.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Trinity Church's Lenten program titled Faith in the 828 being our area code. We have a series here where we're talking and looking at the ways in which our faith is present in all aspects of our lives here in Western North Carolina and specifically in Asheville. And in this series this year, or the title of our series is called Peace in Our Times, which is the refrain to one of the great hymns of the church, God the Omnipotent, as you heard before we began. It's my great pleasure today to welcome Representative Susan Fisher with us as we spend a little bit of time talking about conversations and having conversations around difficult topics, also called conversations across difference in ways that do not add to divisiveness and anger and misunderstanding and miscommunication. So Representative Fisher, I'm so glad to welcome you for this conversation as we look at conversation in the political sphere. So welcome. Would you mind just introducing yourself and saying a few words about yourself?
Well, Scott, thank you so much for having me. I am just so delighted to have been asked to participate. And I am a cradle Episcopalian.
Yes.
I have grown up in the Episcopal Church, beginning with baptism at the All Souls, married at Grace Episcopal, and then now have served as a vestry member at St. John's, which is where I am a member at the present time. And I just found it as always as it's just a home base, totally a home base for me, because you know that anytime you go into an Episcopal church anywhere, it's going to be familiar. And,
yes.
And that's the lovely piece of it. My mother grew up going to Trinity. So my grandmother took her to church there, and
wow.
I'm probably about a sixth or seventh generation Buncombe County person. And
wow.
The Episcopal Church over in Haw Creek was started by a member of one of my ancestors back in the day.
Wow.
And so, I'm pretty steeped in it. And I will say that in the political realm, I'm in my ninth term serving in the North Carolina House, one of 3 reps from Buncombe County. We each represent a part of Buncombe County. I've been doing this now for almost 18 years. And I was elected whip in the House this session, so I'll be whip for the biennium. And it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what I have a belief that I hope it's true that those who go into politics want to do something good in the world. Tell us a little bit about your passion for being involved in politics and how that comes through for you.
Well, you never know what it's going to be like to be in public service, but I had an experience with having worked on Capitol Hill for James McClure Clark in his Washington office. And I was bitten by the public service bug. And I think that when you see someone who is behaving as a statesperson, someone who reaches across the aisle, someone who is respected, no matter what their politics. You want that. I mean, I wanted that for myself. And so I sort of put myself on this path, and it started out sort of working in education circles. You get involved with your children, you want to be involved in their schools. And so I ended up being on the school board at home here in Asheville. And that just led, and that was that the impetus for that came from, they were getting ready to hire a new superintendent.
Sure.
And I wanted to be part of that. And so I think you go at it from this sense that, yes, I can do this. I can make something better for the people that I live with. And that's how you start out. I think often, it's a winding path. And and when you say, people go into this politics because they think they can do good, that's what everybody thinks. And so you got to allow for the people who have their own set of ideas about what kind of good they would like to do. So
of course. Well, thank you. And let's for a moment, let's talk a little bit about what type, what you do on a regular basis. I mean, politics is the art of persuasion in many ways, right? And so it requires conversation. And I do not have to tell you, so to say, that the political rhetoric in our nation in the past couple of years specifically, although it's been difficult for many, many years, has become the word I use. I don't know if you would agree with me, but the word I've used in some settings is almost toxic. And so there's all types of reasons for this. There isn't just one reason. I mean, I do honestly believe that the rise of social media has really shifted our consciousness, not always to the good, that we are able now, I can remember, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm also not, I can remember when, where you got your news was the 3 news channels. You'd have to get home to see the news at a certain time because it wasn't repeated. You couldn't find it on your phone. And you were either an ABC person or an NBC person, and you watched the news, and we all heard the same set of facts, so to say. Boy, is that not true today, right?
Really
I can live by myself in my world on my cell phone and search for the facts that I want to hear. I believe that is a huge cause of rhetoric that is toxic. But we've also seen a rise in name calling, just really toxic ways of relating to one another. So I'd love to just hear a little bit from you about how you go about having conversations across the aisle. In the political world, I call it conversations across difference, because we're interested in these days of, how do we have conversations that matter even at the family dinner table or at Thanksgiving, or, so say a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you do that, what tools work for you.
Sure. Well, I have several different sort of jobs in the legislature that call on me to do different things at different times. For example, I'm on the education committee that deals with K through 12 policy. And so what we, just as an example, we've been looking at a bill this week that was introduced by the Republican Speaker of the House that has to do with, and you're getting a little sneak preview here for anybody who doesn't know about this, that has to do with establishing a 6-week summer program for children who have fallen behind during this COVID time of virtual learning. And who would disagree with that? Who would disagree with the
Right.
need for 6 weeks of catch up for these kids who have really struggled along with their parents? And
Yeah.
so I'm all about it. Want
Yeah.
to do it. But as I read the bill, there are a few things, a few tweaks here and there that I might make to the bill. So what do you do about that? Well,
Yeah.
you go to committee. Well, first of all, you talk to all of the stakeholders around this issue and you get from them what their concerns are. You take that to the committee and you sort of vet it with your counterparts on the other side. And sometimes you will feel heard, other times maybe not so much. But what I am looking forward to is, for example, fast forward to next Tuesday, we'll have another committee meeting where we'll see, okay, did they take some of these suggestions that we made last week to heart? And will we be successful with amending this bill? It all starts with a reasonable conversation.
Yeah.
Where and in a conversation you have to have someone who's doing the talking, but you have to have somebody that's doing the listening.
Yeah.
And I think as much as anything, listening actively,
Yeah.
and engage in an engaged way has been the best thing I could ever do to further communication with my counterparts across the aisle.
Yeah.
And politicians like to talk.
Yeah.
And so you really have to listen, just stop and, okay, what are they really saying to me? What am I hearing?
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to contribute to this, or should I just continue actively listening?
Yeah.
But that to me is the first step toward getting to some sort of equal ground. But now back to what you were saying about the news and how we get all of our information these days.
Yeah.
The stumbling block that I find in the legislature is that politics has been so prescribed,
Yeah.
and our sources, like you said, of gathering news has been so prescribed that you wouldn't, if you are a very conservative right-wing person, you would not dare listen to anything but Fox News, for example.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know that's probably not true for everybody, but here's the extreme.
An example.
If, on the other hand, you are a liberal from Asheville, then you would not listen to anything but MSNBC, right? So somewhere along the line, and I heard this during election season too, somewhere, and maybe it was former President Obama who said it, we have to do our homework. We have to do the research. We have to find out, okay, is this person on MSNBC telling me the straight story, or is it colored with their own opinion? Or, I mean, is this really news? I have to go over to my Fox friend and say, is this really factual? I need to find sources that will help me do the digging and do the research to find out, okay, how can we start this conversation from actual facts instead of feelings and opinions coming from the extreme of both sides?
Yeah.
So yeah. It's a challenge.
Well, it is a challenge. I appreciate the way you describe the challenge. There's so much that's it's said almost every night on the news, that America is deeply divided. America's deeply divided. I actually don't believe that. I actually encounter in my own pastoral ministry many individuals who are willing to see different sides of things. It's just that the larger political rhetoric has become so divisive.
Yes.
And in our nation, there are only two parties you can partake in, right?
Today,
today. And when that becomes polarized, it almost is, but when I take any topic, even gun legislation, when I actually talk one-on-one with an individual who would like to see, to preserve some openness about guns, they're willing to do X, Y, and Z,
Sure.
background check,
Right.
or on the other hand, someone who would prefer to never see a gun, but would you compromise with a background check? Sure.
Mhm.
Many more people who are willing to kind of find that space where we can do good for everyone than you might presume from listening to the wider
Right.
conversation
And to
about.
move away from what you think has been prescribed for you to think or
Right,
believe.
right,
We need to
right,
think for ourselves. And if
right,
we do that, with the example of gun legislation, we know that we don't want children harmed. We
right,
know that we don't want there to be, violence in homes or domestic violence where you're seeing guns involved. We know all of these things. So how can we come together and make the incidence of that less? And I think it's to the gun. Let's see, it's moms against gun violence, or moms for.
yeah,
I can't remember the name of the organization, and I apologize to those folks. But to their credit, they come into every meeting that they have from a nonpartisan platform.
right,
And it's so important for people to feel safe to
yeah,
talk about whatever, whatever their opinion happens to be, and not feel like they're going to get just, ostracized or completely thrown out or whatever. I noticed on the news the other night, they're trying to do these stories that are sort of uplifting to get us out of the COVID doldrums.
yeah.
Well, how about this rural community in Kentucky of Republicans who went to a rural community in Virginia, and they got together for shared meals and shared conversation, and they found out that they were more alike than different. And I think so much of what you were saying is that we don't put ourselves in proximity to that kind of thing enough to find out, this is a person like me.
Right.
They are no different from me. We might think a little differently about some things. We might want to see things accomplished in a different way, but we are humans. We are all human beings. And you just kind of watch that sort of metamorphosis happen where, a shared meal, a shared conversation just really lightens people up.
Changes it all, doesn't it?
So I think there are a lot of things we can do if we just will,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
have to have the will to do that.
Hmm. Hmm. What you're saying reminds me of what we heard last week with our guest, Roberta Wall, who talked to us a little bit about nonviolent communication. And one of her mottos, a motto of the practice of nonviolent communication, is connect before you correct. And I hear that in what you're saying is
I
we
love
do
that.
need we really need to get pardon me, we really have a calling to get to know one another before we decide that we disagree with them about something.
Yeah, we need to build relationship. I know that last spring, I guess it was, the organization Common Cause invited
Right.
myself and a Republican member of the House to come together for a conversation around nonpartisan redistricting, which is a big
Right.
issue,
Yes, it is.
where you want politicians out of the picture in drawing the lines, and you want people who are the voters to come in and make those decisions about where lines should be drawn and for electing your representatives.
Yeah.
And we had the most wonderful discussion because this was a topic that we both believed in, and maybe we thought getting to it might look different, but we both felt the importance of it. I think it takes time and a little bit of effort to find those folks who are willing to put in the time to exercise that listening ability and that sharing ability that I think you find often in safe spaces like churches.
Yeah.
And so I think it's sort of incumbent upon folks in your business
Yeah.
to make that safe space for people to come together and talk about the things that they maybe they're differing on, but maybe they're just coming at it from different angles. So
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I wonder what you would say about this, the perceived anyway challenge. And I wonder, I'm interested in your perspective in the difference between national politics and state politics. At the national level, say Congress, for example,
Right.
It seems like if it was proposed by one party, then no member of another party can ever have anything to do with it, and vice versa. Which how we accept this as voters, I just don't understand. But nevertheless, I would love to believe that it's at least a bit different in the state level. Tell me a little bit. I'm not trying to catch you off guard, but tell me a little bit about how you think it is.
I have to say that it has been fairly polarized over the last decade.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, there are people on both sides of the aisle who are always trying to build that bridge of communication, but leadership often in that realm will not allow it. I was just talking about this very thing with a friend, a former legislator in the House, and we were saying, we were remembering back to when this one person who was Speaker of the House just really prescribed what his members must do, and if they did not do this thing, then they would have someone running against them in a primary. And so, how do you fight against that sort of threat hanging over you all the time? You may want to reach out to your counterpart on the other side, but you've got this threat that's sort of hanging over your head. Right. We've got to get away from, like I said, prescribed politics. We've got to be able to be human beings doing a job. So,
yeah. Well, thank you.
But I guess, I don't know, I don't want to leave your listeners feeling discouraged, though. I really do think that there are people who continue to try to reach across and work with, and we are seeing a lot of our members on our side working to get Republicans on bills with us, finding some point of agreement where they might join them in sponsoring legislation. It's a work in progress, and I will admit that it has been pretty polarized, but I have to stay hopeful that, progress bit by bit will be made.
Yeah. Well, a little bit off topic, your point about redistricting is probably very important in this area, is it not?
Yes.
If it wasn't so obvious who might win in a district, then maybe someone would be required to listen and
exactly
find common ground.
That's right.
Well, I'm deeply thankful for our conversation.
Me too.
I'm appreciative of your time, of your. I still believe that public service is a ministry. So thank you for your ministry. And I'm appreciative of our conversation about listening and listening to one another. It is where it all begins.
I've watched over the holidays. I watched the swaths of birds in the National Cathedral going across the
Yes.
ceiling.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things that keep me hopeful. You know, you can have a conversation with anybody if you're in a surroundings like that, where you've got, you know, somebody with this wonderful installation of art around you. I want to tell your listeners about my granddaughter's name.
Yeah.
I have a granddaughter who has a Japanese mom and an American dad, our son, and her middle name is Chidori. That's her great grandmother, Japanese grandmother's middle name, and it means 1,000 birds. And I love to tell the story because it's just, it's another place where I find peace.
Yes.
I was on a walk with the Audubon folks, looking at birds, and heard this sound, chittery, chittery, chittery. And they said, well, as a matter of fact, that's a Carolina wren. And so here's my suggestion in all of that. So Sophia's middle name is Chidori. I can think of that. I can think of the bird. I can think of 1,000 birds, which is what her name means. I can think of the Peace Park in Hiroshima, where there are 1,000 folded origami birds. And it puts me in a different frame of mind.
Yes.
It puts me in a mind of listening and actually hearing what people are saying. So, and I have one little sort of a poem prayer that I would love to leave your listeners with here at the end.
Please, we'd love to partake.
Okay. This is from a book of meditations and prayers that someone gifted me for Christmas. And, you know, meditation, yoga, listening, talking with people who have different opinions. It's all part of the work that you do. And so the reading for today in this book, how would it be if just for today, we thought less about contests and rivalries, prophets and politics, winners and sinners, and more about helping and giving, mending and blending, reaching out and pitching in. The author is anonymous, so I think they wouldn't mind if I shared that with you. So I just thought it was wonderful.
Well, thank you. It is wonderful, and thank you for sharing it with us. It's a wonderful way for us to close, and thank you for sharing your spirit and in this topic of you know, we are called by Jesus to be people of peace. And, you know, there's a passage in the book of Romans where St. Paul says, as far as it is possible, according to you, be people of peace. So it is a call that peace begins with us. We can't tell everybody else to be peaceful.
No.
We can't tell everybody else to learn how to listen and not be people who do it ourselves. We
have to be the example.
It begins with us.
Correct.
And so thank you. Well, thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for sharing
My pleasure.
your wisdom with us during this series. God bless you, and God bless your ministry, I would say.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.